Yeah, because I need to refresh the computer. Because actually, I mean, I've done it when I've actually started like when people were talking and doing things, and I've also like, anyways. All right, we're live. This hour we're joined by Frank Mundo, who is a poet, an essayist, a novelist actually now, and has done a writer of many disciplines. And we actually met years ago. We're both published in an anthology called Ban This, published by Broken Sword Publishing out of Florida. Um, you had the opening essay, is that correct?
Yeah, it was I think it was back then when we first met. Arizona was trying to pass some laws to ban Chicano studies and African American studies, and this project came about with you and me and a lot of other uh, Chicano writers that wanted to address this law by sharing this work of banned literature, banned ways to get the word out, and that's where we
Yeah.
met. I think we was at a reading at the library. We did a reading at the library, it was really great. Everyone, the mayor was there. Everyone showed up. That was a pretty cool event, and that's where I met you. I saw you perform before that in a couple of places, downtown LA, a couple of times. I think I saw you perform a couple of times, but that was really where I met you. We talked, and it was good.
Yeah, Rudy Acuna's in the book, and he was
Yeah,
at the event. That was wild.
that was amazing. It was you see usually at these poetry events you get 50 people and that's it, but he had like 300 people. It was crazy.
It was
He
wild.
had the place packed.
Yeah, yeah. Santiago definitely did his thing. There's really notable people in there. I think Urea is in there. I mean, there's just a notable. It's quite a collection. It's quite a collection, quite an anthology. I mean, it's really amazing to see all the different people that he was able to get to contribute to the book. So tell us a little about this essay that you wrote in Venice.
Yeah, the essay it's called "How I Became a Mexican." It's about um, as a person, I'm a mixed race person, and uh, I've always had a difficult time with identity, what race means, because I've never been sort of in one group or the other. In a lot of senses, I'm not brown enough to be brown, and I'm not white enough to be white. So I'm kind of stuck in the middle as like a sort of a liminal character. I step in a little bit here, I step in a little bit there. I like to say that um, I get all the prejudice and none of the pride. That's kind of like where I that's where I end up in the spectrum of identity, which is what that essay is about, and it's what I usually talk to when I do presentations. I usually talk about identity, and this is the main theme of my poetry and my more serious writing.
And this essay has been this essay has been requested, or when you do public speaking, this is an essay that's kind of like a centerpiece of your work, right?
Yeah, it's used in a lot of Chicano studies classes in high schools and colleges all over the country. So usually I'll go and read this, talk to the kids, answer their questions. This is the main one. I do um, I have another poetry book that I wrote called The Blueberry Tales. It's really like an epic poem, but this is the main centerpiece of the presentations that I do.
Yeah. Well, without further ado, let's hear it.
All right, so I'll give you the shorter version. It's like a shorter version than the one in the book. It's about 7 minutes, so I hope people will want to put up with it for that long. So I'll go. It's called "How I Became a Mexican." When I was 11 years old, I became a Mexican. I didn't plan on it or anything. It just kind of happened. I went to bed one night, and when I woke up, I was a Mexican. Back then, it was a lot of things, so another title didn't surprise me. I was a son and a brother. I was an artist and a comic book writer. I loved riding bikes, collecting baseball cards, and I was a huge NFL fan. I was also one of the best athletes in my school, and in my mind, one of the best basketball players in the world. I didn't know what a Mexican was just yet, but I was going to be the best at that too. It happened so fast. It was during recess on a new basketball court in a new state and a new school, and it was go time, baby. Time to show these California fools how it's done, son, Maryland style. I was about to introduce myself, to put on a show they'd never forget. I was about to take these chumps to school. In Maryland, we shot free throws to decide team captains, a fair and democratic process. In California, however, there was a far more efficient system. A variation of shirts and skins, they called it whites versus Mexicans, and it was pretty simple. Everyone with white skin was on one team, and everyone with brown skin was on the other. I was impressed. Recess was pretty short, and I wanted as much time as possible to show them what a wizard I was on the basketball court. And that didn't take very long. Shoot for ball, one of the white kids challenged me with a wicked bounce pass, but I short hopped it like a pro, and in one slick move bounced the ball back between my legs and our ball, I declared, before even shooting it, a promise soundly fulfilled with the metallic echo of the chain net, like money in the bank. Cha-ching. I walked back to the Mexican side with swagger, clearly the team's new captain. Let's do this, I said, and the game began. Now, obviously, the Mexicans prevailed. I don't remember all the details, but I remember playing better than I even imagined. Just 2 hours before that, I had stood awkwardly in front of my new classroom as our teacher introduced me to these same students. Nervous and uncomfortable, I tried to avoid their stares and their judgments. But now all of the boys in my class were thoroughly interested in what I had to say. I made friends fast with these boys, real friends, good friends, my friends for the last 35 years. Over the years, we probably played hundreds of games of whites versus Mexicans basketball. My basketball skills, however, didn't translate as well with the girls that day, especially the Mexican girls, who quickly stripped me of my new title, a process they repeat several times over the years. For the rest of elementary school, I became pocho when it was revealed that my Spanish wasn't very good. In junior high, I was downgraded to creído when my Spanish didn't improve, and neither did my effort to improve it. And in high school, I became simply gringo or güero once it became clear that I was hopeless and I would never speak their language, a language they were convinced in those beautiful almond-shaped eyes should have been my language too. I don't blame them, really. They must have been just as confused about me as I was when we first moved to California, especially about my race. It might sound weird, but the subject simply didn't come up until we moved here. Sure, I was brown and my last name was Mundo, but all I knew for sure was that Mundo meant world in Spanish, and that Spanish was some language people spoke in Spain. Sometimes people asked me if I was adopted, but I always told them what my mother had always told me. I was brown and dark haired like my father, and my brother was white and blonde haired like my mother. My father went to prison, and I lived with my mother who didn't speak Spanish. That usually ended any more conversations about adoption. But all this changed when we moved to Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, my brownness could no longer be ignored, and my last name was like a scarlet letter M. In Los Angeles, I was marked for on the very first day of school and for the rest of my life. And not just by white boys and Mexican girls, by everyone, even the government. According to the state of California, I was officially Hispanic or Latino. My school records, the Census Bureau, not to mention every official form or document I would ever fill out, all indicated that I was Hispanic or Latino, as if the government wasn't quite sure. And I wasn't the only new Mexican on that first day of school either. There were at least 3 other brown-skinned ballers who weren't even Hispanic or Latino for that matter. The most blatant violation was committed against my friend Mike, who was Iranian. But in Los Angeles, Mike was a Mexican, and so was I. It was written all over our skin. Later in college, I took a literature course, and one of the subjects we discussed was liminal characters, which were these mystical sort of beings, or monsters even, both good and evil, that lived simultaneously in the threshold between distinct realms. Ambiguous, they eluded classification, and while visible, were at the same time invisible. I was fascinated by this concept and so excited by its implication. For the first time in my life, here was a being I recognized and an existence that mirrored my own. After all, wasn't I a liminal character in between the threshold between two worlds? Wasn't I a white Latino and a Mexican gringo? Suddenly it all made sense and everything clicked for me. I finally knew why everyone else around me was always more interested in my race than I was. It's because I'm a monster, a liminal creature. I ruin culture, I kill tradition, and I devour race. I'm the mucky residue on the mouth of the melting pot, and my very existence is repulsive and horrifying because I represent the future. I represent change, a necessarily ambiguous mixed-race American human, void of classification, stereotypes, and by extension, pride. I am what one day will all be in the future, equal. Which brings us back to the great friends I made on that first day of school in California. I say great friends not just because we've been friends ever since, but because over the years we realized the mistakes we made about each other and the color of our skin, and we fixed them. We changed. We grew up and saw each other through our own eyes, with our own perspectives, and on our own terms. And we're still great friends because we're more than just the colors of our skin. I'm more. I'm a son, a brother, a husband, and a father now, too. I even married one of those Mexican girls with the beautiful almond-shaped eyes. I'm a poet and a short story writer. I love traveling, collecting first edition books, and I'm still a huge NFL fan. But most importantly, when my friends and I get together for a game of whites versus Mexicans basketball, I'm a Mexican and a white. The team captain, in fact, and my team always wins. That's it.
I love it. Um, wow. Yeah. No, I always feel like I don't know. There's this weird thing because like I'm very much come from Mexican background, Mexican or Chano, but there's this weird plight of the brown beigeish man, right? So I feel like I'm
Yeah,
Mexican driving through white neighborhoods and I'm Arab at the airport. You know what I mean? Like it's like
right.
I'm always
Totally.
getting pat down. I am always getting pat down. I started going to the airport wearing like t-shirts that say things in Spanish, and I actually tend to get less harassed when I do that at the airport, right? But then as soon as I get off the
Yeah,
plane,
yeah. I get Italian. People think I'm Italian, maybe because of my name. They think I just think like it depends on if I had grown up in Florida. If I had grown up in New York, maybe in Florida, maybe I would have been considered Cuban. If I was in New York, maybe I would have been Puerto Rican. But in LA, if you're brown, you're Mexican. It doesn't matter where you're from, Guatemala, Peru, you're Mexican, and that's how. Uh, back in the what was this? The late. This is the early mid '80s, so this was a long time ago, but it's still relevant today. The kids that I talk to when I read this essay at school, they still tell me this kind of thing happens, whether they're Korean or whether they're black or whatever their race is. If they're kind of mixed with something, they're not this enough. They're not black enough. They're not white enough. So that kind of like the identity becomes something. I think that's why the essay has been so like successful for me. I think a lot of
yeah,
people can relate.
yeah. No, I hear that. I hear that. I hear I hear the emotional part of it, but my mind is just running to this general this identity of the ambiguously brown, brown ambiguity. Like, and
Yeah,
I think of actors like I can't remember his name right now, but he's Maori, right? But he's always playing Arab or Latino or
right.
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's a few character actors who you'll see uh, just playing all kinds of different roles. Even that guy that did the Hamilton, you'll see him playing all sorts of different roles that you go, wait, I don't think he's Arab. I don't think he's
Yeah,
something like
Cliff
that.
Curtis.
It's like I don't know.
Yeah,
It's Hollywood. Hollywood, they have
yeah.
people that aren't even Mexican playing Mexican, so it happens all the time.
It happens all the time. Yeah, Cliff Curtis is his name. Cliff Curtis.
Okay.
He was in Training Day. He was like the lead gangster in Training Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's been in
Totally.
a bunch of different things. But Cliff Curtis, he's playing that, and of course, I mean, but like I'm not saying this to like complain because I mean Cliff Curtis's great predecessor is or the predecessor of all these people. Cliff Curtis does it. Oscar Isaac does it. There's other people that do this to kind of just play the every Brown, right? I'm not not the every man, the every Brown. But Cliff Curtis does it. Oscar Isaac does it. But the Godfather of the Every Brown is got to be Anthony Quinn, right? Who was
Right.
Mexican,
Yeah, the original. He's the
quarter
original
Irish, right?
OG. Yeah, totally. He's the OG. Brown,
Yeah,
ambiguously brown.
the OG of ambiguity,
Yeah,
ambiguity Brown, and yet deeply Mexican in his ambiguity.
totally. He had to do what he had to do. He probably couldn't get work. Like even like Martin Sheen or someone like that that had to kind of hide it or
Yeah,
make it. It was hard to get roles. It was
yeah,
hard to do it, and that was a
yeah.
different time. And I think it's still a thing today. It's still cultural. It's still a thing where
Well, but
you're not this. You're not enough of this. You're not doing it right.
right,
And
right, right.
I still get it. Yeah.
I think you could. There's a real time like life study there of what happens, what like even if you look white or everyone thinks you're white, what that Spanish surname can do to you. I mean, like think about this. I mean, like look at the careers of his children. You have Martin
Right.
Sheen, you have Charlie Sheen, and then you have Emilio.
Estevez. Yeah.
Estevez, right? And so he kept the name. He kept with it, and you know
Yeah, he's not as he had a couple of movies there, those Young Guns, but that was about it.
Young Guns, Mighty Ducks,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, it's
because they don't
interesting.
want that. They want if they want you to be a Sheen or an Estevez. They don't want to be confused. They don't like the confusion.
Well, I mean, at first it bothered me,
Mhm.
and um, as I got older, I kind of embraced it. I kind of like that I'm stuck in the middle in some ways. I have a different perspective about race, so I think that it helps. Like I don't understand pride in a race because I don't have it. So I don't understand like why, because you're born somewhere or you're like why everyone thinks that's an accomplishment. I always think of something that like that's you're just born. Like it's like saying I'm proud that I have teeth. You know, like you didn't do anything to earn that
Your teeth.
that race. So like you didn't. It's not an accomplishment. You just were born in this place at this time, and you just happened to drop out, and there you are. So I didn't really understand it a lot. So and on the opposite end, I don't understand prejudice for the same reason. Why you would dislike someone for their race when they had no choice in the matter. They were born that way. Like you can't. I don't like that person because that's another. So the opposite side of the coin that I thought was interesting. So I've gone through this for a long time, and it wasn't until that book opportunity came up, and the editor asked me to write some essay for the beginning of it, and I thought, I'm going to talk about this because I really think it's an important theme, and it still is. It's still now when even as we it seems like people want these labels more. I'm a Chicano poet. I'm a Latino poet. I don't want to be a Latino poet. I don't want to be I want to be a poet. I want to be a short story writer. I don't want to be a white I just want to. I want to do the work. So I think there's more labeling now than even when I was younger. When that became, political correctness with labeling and all this stuff. So I think now it's because of this position I'm in. I have a different perspective than most people. That have clear definition of their identity. I just don't have it, and that's kind of like why all of my writing is about that in some level.
Yeah. So like let's get back to this book. So how did you come to the editor Santiago? Oh man, Santiago's first question. What's Santiago's last name again?
What is it?
It's
I
Rivera,
don't
right?
know. I think so. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's Rivera. It's
Hey,
been
this
a while. That book came out a while ago. So
this is that
yeah,
quarantine life. No offense to Santiago. Okay. So Santiago, how did you and Santiago's paths cross that he should ask you to do this?
yeah. We were just. It was just like social media. We had friends in common, and he was putting together a list of names, and I was on the list of people that go to these open mics and do these performances that somebody took notice of that, and then he just contacted me, and then he asked me to show some of my writing, and then he asked me, can I write something new, something different, and I just took the opportunity because not only did I want to write the story, I just thought what they were doing in Arizona was ridiculous. So I wanted to support that cause too. Um, you know, Canceling these classes where students who have a graduation rate at like something unheard of, 80 more than 80%, they're
Mhm.
just going to cancel these programs based on the governor's political political decision. It was disgusting, and I wanted to be a part of the book, a part of all those people, you know, that were in the book, and then also to share my story. So it was a great opportunity, and when he brought me that opportunity, I was like ready to take it.
So you write this essay. It becomes kind of a signature piece that you perform, or piece that you signature piece of literature that you've produced, and that you go around, people are take interest in. So tell us about that. What you write this, and all of a sudden people take note of it, and what happens next?
Yeah, so it's weird because I consider myself a fiction writer, and my most sort of popular work is a nonfiction piece. So That was weird. I just started getting like just mostly social media. Teachers would write to me. They're using it in their class. People like Mike the Poet, he used it in his class. People were using it, and then um, at some point it became part of the curriculum of certain schools, and so um, they were kind of, I don't know how to say this nicely. They were just printing out the book. They weren't buying new copies. They were xeroxing them. So um, I
You
found
don't
a
have to
way
say
to.
it nicely. That wasn't a nice
Anyways,
thing to do.
so
Yeah,
so I was glad.
it's
I was
regular
glad they
stuff.
were
Yeah.
using it, but they weren't. I wasn't getting paid for it. So I found a way to um, have the school buy copies of my books, and then
Yeah.
have me come to the school and make that part of the curriculum instead of you know pirating the work. Well, I was grateful at first because it got my name out there. It got people interested, but you know I got to pay the rent and all
Yeah.
that. So that's that's how
Yeah.
that's how it started.
For everyone out there who's not involved in the wonderful world of academia, you should know academics are pirates. I mean,
Yeah.
like, and they sail the seven seas of the internet, and they they take a hold of what they can. So
Totally.
yeah,
That's why I'm really happy when like someone like Mike the Poet or some other professors that I know that they actually call me and ask me first. But
yeah,
I do appreciate that the schools were using it, and that that I got like a chance to meet the kids later. But
yeah,
that's kind of how it started. And then once you go to one, those teachers tell other teachers, and then it becomes part of a bigger thing.
yeah,
Especially when like I said, when there's some kind of connection or some kind of engagement
yeah,
that the teachers can use for a lesson, not
mm,
just entertainment value or something. That they can actually learn something about identity in a
yeah,
positive way. And I
yeah.
thought that's kind of how it went.
You've mentioned Mike Sonskin a couple of times now, Mike the Poet, and in Los Angeles area, and and throughout the poetry throughout the country, and a few other fields. Mike is very, very well known, but there's a very interesting cross section of people watching this who might not be familiar with Mike's work, might be as familiar with Mike's work. Can you tell the audience a little bit about Mike Sonskin, Mike the Poet?
Well, Mike does so much. Like what I've known from Mike, he does essays, he does poetry, but he also does tours of LA where he actually will take you around the city and show you landmarks and then tell you the history about it in terms of literature, in terms of writing. And he's just a really interesting guy, and I've gotten to work with him a few times too. And I know, like this is the kind of guy that I would want to be. I want to be like him. Like write something that's engaging and entertaining, but also that people can learn from and find value from. And he's always been kind of someone I looked up to as I was working through all the different places in LA and learning about all the different kinds of writing and the different people. It's very diverse. It's very interesting. I lived in Los Angeles for 35 years, but I moved to Rancho Cucamonga, and earlier you were talking about Inland Empire, with Tim, and I thought, it's a totally different scene out here. Now I'm kind of learning out here all of the different things, and there's a lot of people like Mike the Poet that are out here too. So I just really like him. He used to have a reading at the Last Bookstore in downtown LA, and just every time I see him, he's just kind of uh, always positive, always alive in Los Angeles. Like he's just I really dig him. He's a good guy.
Do you know Tim?
No, I didn't know him, but I know in Inlandia, I've heard of the publication. I didn't know that when he came on until listened to that he was involved in that. But I have heard of that, and that's pretty cool. I would like to learn more.
You know John Branningham?
Just from what you heard, just from what you guys talked about in the video. So I don't really know much about him either. So
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I will find out.
right now we all live on the internet, right?
Yeah.
but when this is over, you should really look up Branningham and the work that him, Tim, Elder Zamora, Scott Creeley, and Branningham, a number of people are doing right now at California Images. There's a lot going on there. And when this is over, you should come over to the Doss Center for the Arts, where the literary director there. I mean, he's kind of an asshole, but he'll. I'm the literary director. But if you want to do something,
Totally, I'm always down.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's a little harder now with the kids, but I can squeeze it in there.
Well, if you're in the IE, you should tap in for sure. So you're also a poet. So can you tell us a little about your
Yes, I have a chapbook. It's called Touched by an Anglo. It's with Cattywampus Press. That's sort of my newest. Touched by an Anglo. That's the title of it. So, in the previous thing, I was talking about humor. That I like to put a little humor mixed in with the seriousness, and so that's kind of like that title kind of gives you a feeling of the kind of work that I would put out. I have a really long book of poetry. It's called the Brewberry Tales. It's a 65,000 word poem. So it's like an epic poem that it's like a modern version of the Canterbury Tales, but it's set in Los Angeles after the riots. And that was my first book that I wrote. And that one, when I went to school, I started taking poetry classes, and all the poetry professors, they said the same thing. These guys, Shakespeare and Chaucer and Milton, all these guys, they're the greatest poets ever that in the English language. That they all said it every class. And I thought, if that's true, how come nobody writes like that anymore? Like nobody writes sonnets and villanelles and epic poems and rhyming this. Everything's prose now. It's a different style, and I just thought that's weird. I've kind of fell into that. I know it's not a popular thing right now. The canon, the white male poet who does these sonnets and these things, but for whatever reason, that's what I'm drawn to. I like poetry with form. So I like the structure of it, and then if I have something difficult to write, I like the structure to be even more difficult. The sestina, something like that, and that, for some reason, that's just what I'm drawn to. I have a book now with my publisher. It's a sonnet sequence. It's illustrated, and it's not like what anybody else is doing. I think when I go to readings and I go to things, I'm kind of like the odd person out all the time. My stuff rhymes. It's formal. It's what you do. It's like homework or something to people. It's what you did in college, and it's not. I have a whole book written in iambic pentameter and 65. It's crazy. Nobody does that, and that's just kind of why the Touched by an Anglo. I was drawn to that style, not for any reason other than just the beauty of it. To write for beauty, not for. I don't write for politics. I don't really write about, social things. It's about family. I write about family, about identity, and about beauty. And it's kind of like, that's what I've always gone for. And it's not very popular. It's not a very popular thing.
You say it's not political, but at the same time, you called it Touched by Anglo. I mean, if you were Anglo, you wouldn't call it that. I mean, you wouldn't even occur to you to call it, or you wouldn't even feel the need to call it that. It's no matter what, we can't escape these things. I mean, if you want to write like that, you should write like that. It's kind of interesting you're talking this because I'm actually, and these aren't about me; these are about the people I'm talking to. But it's interesting to open up conversation. I'm actually working on a poem right now called "Precarious Rex," right? And it's about this adjunct professor. It's like a story poem, right? It's about an adjunct professor I said in the San Gabriel Valley, right? And he's a professor of English literature, and it's called Precarious Rex because it's taking the idea of like the precariat, like everyone this generation like being pushed out of labor, right? And like Oedipus Rex, so this is Precarious Rex.
Right. Totally.
And so, but the opening part he says like there's no democracy in the way of things, no democracy in the way of things. And then he says, torture the hands, move by inch of the clock, the world as it is, whether you like it or not. For all the world is a cage, and we men and women merely prisoners. And then what I've done is I've taken the monologue from As You Like It, rewritten it as a poem. So it goes through all the stages that the Shakespeare thing goes through. And then it says, like, but we're not there yet. Enter stage left, precarious Rex, brown bagging on a splintered park bench in search of all that went wrong, right? And then so then it takes this tale of him going through San Gabriel Valley, trying to explain to you why he's an adjunct professor and he's so brilliant and he should be tenured, but he's not. And he's on this quest to find out why, right? And so it's like it takes like that kind of that kind of like Don Quixote, Oedipus
Totally.
Rex, all these kinds of different kinds of
See,
things.
that sounds like the kind of thing that I like. Like I know when you write a poem, there's a lot of research involved, and
Mm,
your poems have a lot of structure. It doesn't. It's not like a sonnet or
yeah.
whatever, but you have a lot of structure in your poetry, and you have a lot of uh, literary devices that you use. People
Mm,
think that there's this thing that we have in our community, that there's a performance poet and there's a paper poet, and I don't understand, you know, what that matters. They say,
right, right.
oh,
But I
Matt,
would say,
right? Like,
yeah,
yeah, like this. Oh, Matt Sadil's a great performer.
yeah, that's what they said.
Yeah, like that kind of thing. What is that? You know, like,
Well, I'll
like,
tell you what it is. I'll tell you what it is. It's racism, because I'm actually much better. I mean, this isn't about me; it's about you. But like, I'm actually much better a writer than most of these people they're talking. The structure, the form, the amount of content, the way I move
exactly.
content. I perform well, but I also write better than them. And I write better than them because I have a structure that I use. It's not because I'm smarter; it's because I use a structure. And the only thing about you, you're talking about like these white structures, and yeah, I agree, they come from Europe, those, but like
Right.
the structures I
Exactly.
use, I invented. Like they begin with me, and so if they're taken on by future generations, especially Chicanos, it's a Mexican tradition. It's a Mexican American tradition, began by Matt fucking Cedillo. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not,
Yeah.
it doesn't have its roots anywhere else but me. Like, and the things I invented. And so I want people to copy me. I want them to be like me, especially I want everyone to be trying like, take some of the things I do and work. That's you're not a giant until someone else is standing on your shoulders. That's what makes you a
Right.
giant. Like, so I want to be influential. I want people to try and write like I write. Um, but um, but yeah, people just talk about me as a performer because they don't want to deal with the fact that, like, no, I actually write really well. I mean, I actually there's a lot of like maneuvering. There's a lot of tricks. There's a lot of whatever. And that's because of stuff you're writing about, the whites and the Mexicans and stuff like that. It's the same. That's the same idea that, like, yeah, I can be exciting. Yeah, I can write well. Yeah, I can be a voice of my people. Like, no, I am really good at what I do because of the research I put in and the techniques I employ. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think that's why I'm glad that you are publishing your poetry now. You know, I got your book, um, and I just that's what I'm saying. I can see the structure
Mm-hmm.
when I read it. I've seen you perform the same poems,
Yeah.
you know, several times. I've seen you perform them live. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like I've seen it, and then when I see it on the page, it's I can go at my pace. I can go a lot slower. I can see all of it. I can see the wordplay and the foreshadowing. I can see all the three acts. I can see all of it, and that's what the same thing I like. But mine is the structure I like. They're already created. They're
Yeah.
already there, and I change them up a little sometimes. I do my
Mm-hmm.
own thing, but like that's for me. That's the craft of it. Like you have to say what you want to say, but if you can say what you want to say within the structure, it's kind of like much for me. It's cool. It's like saying I can say what I want to say with my hands tied behind my back. It's kind of a game,
Mm-hmm.
and the more difficult thing that I have to say, like let's say I wrote a poem about my brother's suicide.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a poem about when I lost my hearing. When the doctors told me my hearing is gonna go away, and so I wear hearing aids now. So like, and that was a sad day. It was like real. I wasn't that old, and I thought people were gonna make fun of me. I'm gonna be old, and people are gonna say stuff. So I wrote a poem about it as like a a child's rhyme. I just thought it would be funny. Like it would be. Uh, it's a structured way of kind of laughing at it and making fun of it, but within that form, that's kind of where I find the meaning of it. Part of the process of the poem is the form itself, and that's usually when I pick the form and then I pick the message within the poem, and that's why it's touched by an Anglo, because they are, like you said, they are, they're French, they're they're all white poems, they're white
Yeah.
styles,
No, no,
and
I didn't mean to like go off right like that, but I didn't mean to go off like that. But like, but the fact is that identity is not enough. We have to create our own styles. We have to create our own structures. We have to play with
yeah,
structures that we come in contact with. And I'm a
I think
big
it's
believer.
great. I do. I think that also you hear the opposite too, like uh, paper poets. They read poetry voice. They can't perform. They're boring. So it's kind of goes both ways. So like,
And many of
uh,
them aren't that good. I mean, many of them
yeah,
really as writers. I'm not talking about performers. As writers, they're really not that good. They simply because of what they choose to write about, and because uh they're really not that good. I mean, they're really, I mean, as writers, they're really not that. I mean, a lot of them are really, I mean, not, I mean, there's excellent writers everywhere, but a lot of these people, just because they think that they read in a monotone voice and they touch the topic you're supposed to talk about if you're a
right.
serious writer, that they're good, and they're not. They're just not. They just know each other. They just know each other and have access to university money. Anyhow,
No,
we have
totally, I
questions.
agree. I do. I
Questions from
agree.
the
I think
audience.
like my. Sorry about
Oh,
that.
no, go on. I'm sorry.
Okay. I was just gonna say that that's just like you said. It's something that bothers me, and for some reason we don't talk about it. And I think you are the sort of pinnacle of that. People, you perform so well, but people need to see it on paper too, and they'll see what I see. And this is why I always recommend you to people, is because I think um, they need to see that. They need to see that that's legit. It's craft. I'm into craft. I'm into structure. I'm into that's my what I style, and yours is legit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I didn't mean to seem like I was getting angry. I just get really, I get I'm involved in a lot of push for like ethnic studies stuff like that, and oftentimes they say this thing about we need to do this without losing our rigor, right?
Yeah,
Without we bring in these authors and not lose any rigor, right? But it's like I don't know. I'm one of the most like rigorous people in terms of structure. Frank, you are very rigorous in terms of structure. Like when I read your stuff, when I see your stuff, it is there's a lot of just interplay of this, that, the other. And yes, again, it's variations of European, writing. But like, the fact of the matter is, because your last name is Mundo, that falls under the rubric of ethnic studies, right? And
right. It
and
doesn't. It doesn't.
right. Yeah, right. So like because your name is Mundo, it's now ethnic studies. But it's even when doing their traditions, it's like, well, we want, we need to make sure that Frank understands how to da 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 da. Even if you produce like bodies of literature, writing sestinas and sonnets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's you're not allowed to just to present your work without this like stigma or question marks or etc. So I mean we can't escape the world no matter whatever we want to be. We can't escape the world. I mean we gotta really we gotta do something here. But we got a question from the audience. It says Langston Hughes said black people could not express the lack experience in white poetry form, the black experience in poetry forms. Do you agree, or can you mold other experiences in white forms?
Oh, absolutely. I think you can. I do it all the time. The form is very mathematical. It's like math. Math has no language. That you can do math. It's formulas. It's the fact. It's 1 plus 1 is the same here. It's the same in China. It's the same in Iran. There is no cultural significance other than the names. The Arabic numerals or these things are who discovered them. They get to name things, but the form itself, um, you don't even need to learn about. You could write a sonnet without learning any reading ever reading a sonnet.
Yeah.
So I think you can, as long as you're using the form to 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 fill that blank, whatever that formula, into putting your message, absolutely you can. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the people reading it would appreciate or understand that. If you're reading Langston Hughes at that time and you're a white person and you don't have any kind of understanding of that culture, yeah, you might think that that doesn't work. You say, oh, that doesn't work, but it does.
Yeah, yeah.
Just because you misinterpret it doesn't mean it doesn't work. Doesn't mean that it didn't happen. You look at what when he tried to do specific forms like I try to do.
Mhm.
You know, it works. It just it's hard to it's hard to see it without the I don't know that whatever that language was that they used. Um, that's I don't see that. I don't think um, that's a political argument. That's somebody saying that's racism. That somebody's saying you can't do it because you're black.
Mhm.
You
I
can't
think,
write. You can't use these forms.
yeah, yeah.
So segregation of poetry.
I think though the one thing I think you know when I think about this, I don't know. This conversation's got me thinking about certain things, and it's got me thinking about. We were talking about Anthony Quinn earlier, right? And I heard this story, um, and I don't know. How, I mean, it's a story I heard. I don't know, but I heard that Luis Valdez based El Pachuco off of Anthony Quinn's portrayal of a character in the Oxbow incident, right? So
Right.
in the Oxbow incident, Anthony Quinn has about 7 minutes screen time as this this guy who's part of a little group of people who are going to be unjustly hanged, right? And originally they wanted Anthony Quinn to play the role of this Mexican with no dignity and just be like, ooh, like oh, no one came to see me. But Anthony Quinn was a G, right? He wasn't gonna do that. So Anthony Quinn was like, no, I'm gonna play it this way, and it's gonna be better. Trust me, right? And so he played the role with a lot of dignity and like, in the face of death, like being proud in the face of death, like this, like strength in the face of adversity. And it's where, but the particular and peculiar mannerisms that Anthony Quinn showed courage in the face of certain death, right? The mannerisms that he moved around in became this kind of template and standard for Mexican American men for like a century. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
Anthony Quinn's like movement and mannerisms in a short role in a small role in a film made in the 1940s, of which he was not the star, really in many ways was hugely influential. Not just the people who saw that, but to other creators and cultural, people who made these films and shape the culture. And so what I say all this to say is that the things that we do, you know, can shape the way things are done. You know what I'm saying? Like the things that we do, the templates we make, people will look back and be like, that's a tradition. I mean, 'cause that's how all traditions begin. All traditions begin this way. Whatever they are, every culture is just something somebody made up. It was like somebody in the village did something better than everyone else in the village, and for
Right.
generations we copied it because it was so fucking good, and that's culture, right? So like all across the world, somebody did something better than everyone else around them, and for generations we all tried to emulate that one guy who did that one thing, and we improve upon it, we expand upon it, and it becomes this one person after another creating something that was based on something that somebody created. It's not inherent. It's not in our bones. It's not. It's something that we as people do, and then other generations pick up on it and move with it. The
Yeah.
structures you're talking about, somebody invented them.
That's why, like, there's this Chaucer, this the Canterbury Tales. It's the 500, 600 years old, and for whatever reason, this I'm in college and I'm reading it, and I'm laughing out loud, and I'm thinking that here it is, all these centuries later, and like you said, I'm still inspired by it, and I still want to write something, and I created something,
Yeah.
and maybe somebody will read my thing and want to create their thing,
Right.
and
Right.
maybe
Right.
so it keeps going. It's like, and
Yeah.
that's amazing. 500, 600 years later, and this guy's still whatever. Put I mean all the politics, whatever. He inspired me to write, to want to be a writer,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to write in a way that I just didn't see anymore. It was like mind blowing to me. It's like everything I read was like it seemed like a laundry list or like a Facebook post. I didn't get it. Like what are the people writing?
Yeah.
Like where's the flair? Where's the rhyme? Where's the I don't know the funny? Where's the it was it was it was all of that, and it was political. I mean, he had a lot of politics in there too, and I just that changed my life. That
All
changed
around
my
the
life.
world, all around the world, people write haikus. You know,
Right? Exactly.
the haiku has gone global. You know, the haiku is something that we don't. I mean,
Yeah. No
most
one
people who
says
write
you
haikus
can't.
don't
No
even
one
know.
says you
Don't
can't
even
do
know where it comes
that.
from. No.
No one says you can do. No one says you can't do that structure if you're not Asian. If you're not right, like that's the same thing. Like that's a very challenging form, and
Yeah.
to say what you need to say in that little bit of space. That's why that part of the challenge is part of the craft, and I love it.
Yeah.
I haven't really gone done a lot of haiku. Maybe that's something I could actually investigate because that sounds like a challenge I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, haikus. I mean, like, but yeah,
Yeah,
I hear what you're saying about some of these writers. I mean, I know it gets politicized because it's European and there's a canon that's kind of bad. Our heads are hit with
yeah,
hammers, right? So that's
right,
what makes it so
exactly.
political. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we still talk about Shakespeare, we still talk about Chaucer, we still talk about these people. But in a similar way, we still talk about Li Po, we still talk
Right,
about Rumi. You
tofu.
know,
Yeah,
centuries later. And I mean that's I mean like honestly I think that's what our goal should be as writers living today. We need to like write in a way where we will be discussed in 200 years, 300 years, 400 years. And if you're not
totally.
writing
That's the
like
goal.
that, if you're not writing like that, if you're just writing what comes off the top of your head, that's probably not going to happen. That's probably not just to be real with you. If you just you know
Yeah, that's what I said. Research, structure, form, craft, read a lot, study, do
yeah
what you do. Go to these places, perform, learn from the audience. If you're not
hmm
doing that, you know, I don't know what the right way is, but that seems like the right way to me.
yeah
That's there's
so
maybe a lot of ways to do it, but that seems like the way to do it.
yeah.
You know?
So Hiram Sim says rappers write a lot of songs in classic forms, iamb, touches, anapists, dactyls. It makes me question whether these forms are global rather than rooted in white poetry. So do you think like some of these things are just Noam Chomsky wrote a lot before he got political, wrote a lot about like syntax and how like there are certain like forms that just make sense in the mind. I mean, do you think that's a possibility that it's not just tradition, but there's a reason why certain traditions
Oh, totally.
last?
I think we actually speak in a like a pattern that is sort of iambic. It might not be pentameter, but it's certainly iambic. If you listen to like rap music, like Kendrick Lamar, he does it. I don't even know if he knows he's doing it. I got poetry, I got poetry inside my DNA. It's exactly, you'll follow it. It's very close to iambic pentameter. I don't know if he did that on purpose. If it's just like you said, it's a natural way that we speak. And I think it works. Like a lot of music is that way because it has to. When they sing it, it's even more so than poetry. It has to flow.
Yeah,
It has to make like a rhythm. So anytime it's off, it goes to your ear and it hurts, and you're like, "Ooh, that wasn't right." It's like something happened. Like when you do it on
yeah,
paper, you can get away with it, but like when you have that, whatever that is, that I am. I got poetry. I got something inside my DNA. Like he's hitting that every time, and even like Chuck Berry, riding along in my automobile. It's I am pentameter. My baby beside me at the wheel. If you listen to it, it does it. It's like he misses it sometimes. It's 11 syllables. There's a 9 or 12, but it's that he's following this form, which I don't even know that he knew. It's just a natural, gifted person who happened to do it right, who happened to just do it according to these rules,
mhm,
like naturally. So I think there is a with rap music because it has to be natural, because it has to flow. There is a tendency, which is ironic, to kind of adapt these poetry styles of Europeans.
yeah.
It's kind of funny. It's an
Well, we're
interesting.
speaking English, so I mean, like the English language has a certain rhythms. But
Yeah, there's
I
like a
think what's
pattern.
really interesting is that about a couple years ago. So earlier, I was talking to somebody. We were talking about the Mexican muralist movement, right?
Yeah,
And there were articles before COVID broke out that said, it's possible the Mexican muralist movement was the most important artistic movement of the 20th century. It's just possible, right? Which is like to me, if you're not racist, that's really obvious. The Mexican muralist movement was the most important artistic movement of the 20th century because like you can go cities around the world, and the simple concept of paint your history on a wall has been taken up by the entire world, right? So clearly, yes, it's the most obvious one. But a similar thing came out about a few years ago that said which language has the high musical style has the most like is like essentially the most articulate, has the most words, right, or the most, and of course the answer was hip hop, it was rap. And like, unless you're a racist, that's pretty obvious because it's because they're talking. I mean, there's the most amount of words in a rap
Words,
song
yeah.
than any other genre of music. Um, and so I think it's really interesting that there's so many like styles and things and variations that come out of just the it's just so I just it racism ruins everything. I mean, there is there's genius in the entire world. If you're there, if
Yeah.
you see it, but um, and that you know, but so much time the people that want to fight against the people who are fighting against the injustice of the world um, think that form or science or structure is somehow the enemy, right? Like no, I mean, look at you couldn't build the Taj Mahal if you didn't have like mathematic concepts. Or like, you couldn't
Right.
build the pyramids of Giza. You couldn't build Chichen Itza. You couldn't build any of these things anywhere in the world. You couldn't have built the Great Wall. You couldn't have built anything in the world if you didn't have a concept of like math. If you didn't have a concept of science and structure and of how things are. Then people couldn't have written these beautiful pieces of literature from all over the world or wherever if they didn't have a concept of expression that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. I mean, there's just some
Right.
universal patterns that are always
And I
true. I feel like I feel like you can write almost anything because you have a really strong like concept of a beginning, a middle, and an end of structure.
and I
So like,
think that because it forces you when you
mhm,
have 14 lines and
mhm,
three sort of thoughts within that line, and then there's sort of the punchline at the end. Like it forces you to sort of adhere to structure, to understand structure. And like I said, I know you like to read things and watch movies and do things to find structure. And I think that becomes part of the just the way your mind works.
yeah,
And then when you do these forms or you do these things, um, it just becomes a natural thing. It kind of ruins sometimes the experience. You can't just watch a movie and enjoy it anymore because you're looking for patterns, you're looking for structures, you're looking for things that you can use in your own work,
yeah.
material, things in your life, and it's hard.
But even what
It's hard not to do it.
Yeah, even what I've been doing now, though, even what I've been doing now with these interviews, right? This has been a question of structure to me. This has been a question of the We're gonna be in here, we're gonna move here, we're gonna be there. And what
Yeah,
happened with me and you somehow is you said some things that really got me like passionate, and a conversation broke out. But like,
well, that's
but
good.
but
That's what we like. Right?
yeah, that's good. That's good. But I had an idea in my mind ahead of time when we started talking, like, okay, we'll begin with this, we'll begin with that, we'll begin with this, and then we'll get the plugs in. So it was like, here, 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 and we'll keep this here because it won't be anticlimactic. So even in this like this concept of having a casual conversation, I had a structure in mind so that it wouldn't drag. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, so people really need to commit. I really this has been a very interesting day for me because I talked to you, I talked to Jaha earlier, I talked to Tim just I think it was I just talked to Tim. So I've talked to these several different people coming from several different racial ethnic backgrounds, right?
Yeah,
And everyone has come to the same conclusion that you need form, you need structure, you need discipline, you need to like, and you need to be a little harder on yourself. Like
totally.
if you want the things associated with acclaim, if you want your work to be good, if you want your work to last beyond you, you have to like make demands of yourself. You're not entitled to be good. You're not entitled to greatness. You're
Right.
just not.
Also, I think you should have some kind of signature. Like when I hear you perform, that's a Mezzadeo poem. When I write something, I hope people read it and go, "Oh, that's a Frank Mundo poem." I can
Yeah,
tell by the way he does this, the way he does that. I hope people see that, and they see some kind of um, consistency in my work that shows that craft and that shows that effort and shows that learning, which I think I hope that it does. And
yeah,
I think if you have that, it's like with music. When you hear a certain style or certain type, you know that who that is. Oh, that's Whitney Houston. That's you hear the like her voice. Oh, that's her. So that's kind of like what I hope within that form. I'm using this form, but I want to be recognized.
Yeah.
and I want to be heard in my expression and what I want to say. And like you said, I don't care if it's not popular. I don't care. Like all the magazines, if you try to submit, like in the submission guidelines, it'll say no rhyming poems. So I'm like excluded right away from almost half of them. So it's like I could change my style, or I can just keep doing what I like, and it's gonna be good. If I try to write these other things, it's not gonna come out right. It's not gonna sound smooth. It's not gonna sound like I put any effort into it,
Yeah.
and I don't want to do that. I'd rather just be not
Yeah.
popular.
Right, right. Well, I really, in the workshops I do, I always, in the serious workshops, not in the general workshop, in the kind of general workshops where people are just trying to like get their story out, I show them some form and structure so that they can um, get out there, get their story out in a more dynamic fashion, right? And that's
Right.
all I do. I'm not here to tell you what your story is. I'm going to help you express yourself. And so all my workshops are all about form. I'm known as a political poet, but my work as a workshop leader, I'm not political at all. I'm here to show you form.
Right.
Um, but in the more serious ones, where it's really serious and people really want to take their writing more seriously and improving their writing, on those ones, I'm always like, look, you need to develop a style and turn that style into a discipline and turn that discipline
Yes.
into a standard of excellence that you hold yourself to every time. And if you do that, then no one can discredit you and no one can validate you either because you know why you're good. You know better than anyone why you're good. You know what I'm saying? So it
Yeah.
doesn't even matter if this other person's really good. It doesn't matter. They can't tell you anything because they're not you. You're you, and you're distinctly you, and you know why you're excellent. And it has nothing to do with other people's opinions because it's internal, not external. You know what I'm saying? It's not like I tried to be like you but failed. No, you are this excellent expression that is unique and different from anyone. You know, but you have to make
Yeah.
demands. You have
You
to
get a
make
lot of
demands of yourself.
a lot of young people fall into that trap. Like people, like when I go to the schools, I give out my email to the kids so if they have any questions, I'll answer their questions. And a lot of times they'll send me their poem and they'll say, I want to hear what you think. And I'm thinking, why? Like what does what I think matter to your being a poet or you're deciding to be a poet? Like I have very limited knowledge of poetry of the grand scheme of things. So what does my opinion matter? I think in the last call you said we are not our poetry. So I think like a lot of young people get into that idea like um, I need to be write some way or I have to be say this or do that or I'm not a real poet or I need to get in this magazine or I'm not a real poet. And I don't think that matters. I think excellence you could be an excellent poet and work on your craft and still never have any kind of success, but you still be good. And I
Yeah,
think that's what they need to worry about is writing better. Write better. Don't
yeah,
change. Don't change. Don't try to be Matt Deal or Frank Mundo. Like try to be yourself. Do your own
yeah.
thing. You know.
Talk about the things you're passionate about, but like really see people say this thing all style no substance, right? And I hate that. I hate that. And then people might be surprised to hear me say that I hate that because I'm associated with like politics and you said something important, right? But no, yes, I said something important, and because I wanted that message to get conveyed, I worked very diligently and hard on my style. Style is
Yeah.
equally important to substance. It is equally
Absolutely.
important to substance. It is equally important. And you need to work on your style if you want to be an effective communicator. If you want people to hear what you have to say, it's not on them just because what you're saying is important. It's not on them just because it means a lot to you. You have to work on what you want to say if you want to be heard. And if you want a big stage, if you want the thing, you have to do the thing.
Totally
And I
agree.
think I mean, you're an example of that. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you've seen you in many, many places, many iterations all across Los Angeles. You're a storyteller, a poet. Your name's out there. Frank Mundo.
Thanks. That's the goal. Just make it something that. Also, every time I finish a new poem and I'm happy with it, which is less and less as I get older. I always think I'm never going to write another poem again, and I think every time I finish one, because I have a high standard for myself, I think I'm not going to be able to do that again, and it takes time, and takes me longer for each one now that I get older, and that happens every time because I want to, like you said, I'm focusing on the craft, and unfortunately, the more you learn, the less confident you are about what you know, and I kind of it makes it more challenging to write well. So this is something that I noticed too, that I need to it's that imposter syndrome, whatever that is. Like each time I try to create something, I want it to be so good and so in this way that I'm almost like a little bit limiting myself. Something I need to work on going forward, or I'm not going to be able to write anymore. So this is something I tell the young people too. Um, Keep reading, keep learning, keep doing it, and um, don't listen too much to what the other people saying. Write what you want.
Right, what you want. So Frank, you got any projects to tell us about?
I have well, I just sent like I said, I have a new book that's with the publisher now, Cattywampus Press. They're the ones who publish Touched by an Anglo. People can grab that there. The
That still
brew,
makes me laugh.
so I have the Brewery Tales. Another book called Different. It's a novel, and then I have a collection of short stories called Gary the Four-Eyed Fairy, and those are all you can get those anywhere: Barnes and Noble, Amazon, whatever, Kindle. So it's all around. Just look for me on YouTube, whatever. I have a lot of videos. Anything, contact me on Facebook, whatever. I'll be glad to connect with anybody.
Yeah.
Talk about poetry. Talk about books and writing. I love that.
All right. Well, thank you, Frank, for joining me, and it was a lively conversation. I didn't really expect to be that animated, to be honest, but
Oh,
I
that's good.
appreciate
That's good.
it.
I love it. And
It's
thanks
good.
for having me. I appreciate it. This is a great series. I'm looking forward to seeing more.
Yeah, yeah. All right.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Bye.